Explain, the show where an old-timer explains old-timey things to young whippersnappers, and they, in turn, explain newfangled nonsense to him. And now, here's your host, Precious D.
Hello, oldsters and youngsters, and welcome to Oldsplain Youngsplain. I'm your host, Precious D, and with me today is returning to the show. What are we calling you, BrieCheese?
I can be BrieCheese. It's my favorite cheese. I can go by Brie with an IE. It's important that it's an IE, not just an I.
Okay. Well, that would be Bri.
No, it's Brie, like the cheese.
Okay.
It's very important.
Okay. Anyway, Brianna is with us under whatever name we're just trying to find your internet tag, your gamer tag to use.
Yeah, BrieCheese is probably the best bet you're gonna get.
Okay. First, before we get on to this week's topic, let's follow up with last week's topic. The Youngsplain topic was My Immortal. I've since read as much of My Immortal as I could. I've read as much of it as I could tolerate, which was not very much. It was really, really bad. Truly bad on every level conceivable. I don't know why anybody would subject themselves to this, or anyone who had written it would think, I need to share this with the world.
Okay,
it was stunning.
Here's the number one question for when it comes to consuming My Immortal. Do you think it is a genuine attempt at writing, or is it a troll?
No, I think it is sincere in its badness.
I also think it's sincere. I've met a lot of people that don't think it's sincere, and also almost every single person that's come forward claiming they wrote My Immortal has claimed it was a troll and it wasn't sincere, and they're all liars. None of these people that have said I wrote My Immortal have been proven to be the author of My Immortal, and I think it's because they fundamentally misunderstand what My Immortal is. I don't
know why you would go to the bother if you weren't actually trying.
Yeah. I think some of it is the hyper specificity she gets of certain Harry Potter details. Like, she knows the name Norris and Filch, but she mixes them up and calls the cat Filth and the janitor Mr. Norris. And it's like, that seems like a weird detail for you to memorize, but then to mess up that badly. Like, how do you have this level of knowledge, but also this lack of knowledge? And I think what it is that Raven, who you might see mentioned in the author's notes a few times, Raven is the way that Tara is consuming Harry Potter. Tara goes, hey Raven, what happens in Harry Potter? And Raven explains it verbally. And that's how she knows all these weird details, but she's still missing such big things.
You don't think she read or watched any of it directly?
Okay, well, she specifically says that she did not read the books, that it's based off of the movies, but this was also in the early 2000s.
That's right.
So how many movies had come out at that point?
What I found amusing was the notes at the beginning of the later chapters, where she would just complain. Stop. Was she spelling it flame? She's telling people to stop flaming her. At some point
she did say, stop flamming the story.
Yeah. She's saying that she's not going to write anymore.
Not Mary Sue.
The thing is, her spelling is much worse in these introductory notes than in the story itself. Or she's using more internet spelling, abbreviating and stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of on purpose, because she's trying to, look hip and cool with the kids. Yeah. At this point, there would have been at max 5 of the Harry Potter movies out, but I think it's probably closer to just 4.
Right.
So she only has the first 4 to work off of.
She complains that everybody's flaming her story, and she's not going to write anymore until people post good reviews. I don't know if anyone ever did post any good reviews, but she kept writing anyway.
Well, I am fairly certain people did. Here's my thinking is, the reason My Immortal was popular when it was coming out. Not because it was a good piece of literature, but because people enjoyed shitting on it. And,
Yeah.
If the mob wants more things to shit on, they will give in to the easy demand of making a sock puppet that arbitrarily praises the story to get those 10 good reviews in so they can continue having more material for them to mock.
Yeah. I also thought I think the first time she mentions Mary Sue, I don't think she knows who Mary Sue is.
No, she has no idea what that is.
Later, it seems like she's figured it out. But she's just complaining that everybody keeps calling her Mary Sue. Her name is Raven, not Mary Sue.
No,
how stupid can you people be? Enobi, yeah. Not Ebony, Enobi.
Yeah, she misspells it as Enobi in that specific author's note.
Yeah,
pretty sure.
Yeah. What's the full name? Because it's just ridiculous.
Ebony Darkness Dementia Raven Way. Later changed in the story to Ebony Darkness Terra Way whenever she and Raven get into a fight. And then changed back to Ebony Darkness Dementia Raven Way. I don't know how far you got into it, but that happens in the author's notes. Raven and Terra get into a fight. And she kills off and brutally defiles the corpse of Raven's character.
Oh my god.
And renames herself so the name Raven is not in her self-insert character's name. It's like a whole thing. It's fascinating. This is the stuff that makes me think, this has to be real. Because, this seems such, an odd level of detail and effort to put into a fake thing. Also, Raven has an account on fanfiction.net that was publishing at the same time and lines up with Tara's stuff.
Right. Now, Tara is the name she's using, but we don't think it's her real name?
So Tara Gillespie is the name that's often attributed to the author, believing that the author's name is Tara Gillespie. Because of some internet shenanigans where the people tried to, I think they did a thing where they searched the email address that was tied to, because at some point she had put out her email address. They searched her username, found a place where one of her usernames had posted her email address, and then they used that email address and they put it into different website things so that it would produce the accounts tied to those email addresses. And on one of those accounts, the name Tara Gillespie is used. And so that's why people call her that. That's the only reason why we have some idea of her name. That might not even be her actual name, but it seems like a weird thing to lie about.
What was she, what name was she publishing it under? Was using some kind of, just a username?
Yeah, it's
anonymous.
One moment, so let me just get I believe it's XXX Bloody Tears 666XXX, or is that Raven?
Midnight Essence?
No, okay, so she's Bloody Wrists 666. I think is her username. Let's see.
Okay. Good lord.
XXX Bloody Wrists with no W 666XXX. That's the username. Okay.
I was just wondering if Tara was a real name or if she had named herself after a Buffy character. That's all.
I have no idea.
All right. Well, yeah, it's truly awful. I cannot recommend that anybody read it under any circumstances for any reason.
I recommend you read it for the joy of consuming trash. Sometimes there's joy in doing that.
Did you enjoy any of
vampire. It? Or do you have any highlights that you...
God, no. It's just insane. Everybody's a vampire, but Harry Potter is called Vampire.
Yes, his name is, he goes
by
But
everybody
vampire.
else... Yeah, but everybody else is a vampire, which to me is just pure insanity.
All the main characters have their names changed, except Draco, because I think Draco was edgy enough for whatever reason, but everyone else has their name changed.
Sure. I don't get it. I don't get it at all. I don't know why you would do that. Why you would take this thing you supposedly like and turn it into this other insanity that's not.
So see, I don't think she's a Harry Potter fan.
Well, yeah. She should have just written her own awful vampire story instead of a Harry Potter story.
I don't know. Part of the reason that I enjoy it so much is that it feels like a really earnest, I just remember writing cringe like that. It wasn't, I'd like to think that my 13-year-old self writing stuff like that, my stuff was not as cringe, but it was very cringy. And I just think it's so shameless, and I appreciate the shamelessness and of just being a teenage girl that was like, you know what, I want to be a wizard and I want everyone to be in love with me, so I'm going to do that, and everyone's going to dress in the way I think is cute to dress. And it's just play, really, is what it is. And
yeah.
I enjoy that, like getting to see that. The results are very funny and not necessarily good, but I admire the sincerity that I do think is there.
Right. Yeah, there's so many just basic writing mistakes, like the character just telling you everything about how she looks and what she's wearing. That you don't do that. It's unnecessary.
Not to mention the like grammar and spelling stuff. Like the only way to kill a vampire is with a steak, as in like a piece of meat.
Right. Kill them with that cholesterol. Play the long game. All right, folks, that is enough of My Immortal for now and forever.
You say that. I'm going to find a way to drag it back out.
Our Old Splain topic this week is Micronauts. Ladies and gentlemen, I invite you to enter the interchangeable world of the Micronauts. This is something from the 70s. They started as toys. So in the 70s, there was this big oil crisis you may or may not have heard about.
I read one sentence about it on the Wikipedia page.
You need oil to make plastic, and you need plastic to make certain toys. So because of that, the idea of making smaller toys became appealing, because you had your 12-inch G.I. Joes back then and your 12-inch Barbie dolls. And a Japanese company, Takara, had a line of small toys called Micromen. And they were like 4 inches high instead of 12. And also some of them were made out of metal. Some were plastic, but some were metal. And Micronauts were the American company. Mego picked up a license to make these toys. They changed the name to Micronauts.
Can I say something about the Micromen?
Sure.
I love that the Micromen, the explanation for why they're so small is like they gave this explanation claiming that like, oh, they seem really small to us, but this is like how big they actually are. They're from micro Earth, but they're like giants on there. But this is what their real life, and I love it so much.
They aren't miniature dolls. These are life-size representations of the Micromen.
I thought that was so cute.
Yes. So Mego was already well known for making the second greatest toys. At the time, they were the greatest until Micronauts came out. They had a line of superhero toys, and they had the license from both DC and Marvel. These were 8-inch dolls, action figures, whatever, with cloth costumes, and they were both DC and Marvel, so you could have your Superman and your Spider-Man together. We had a lot of these toys when I was a kid. They also made like Planet of the Apes and Conan and Tarzan, and I think they made a Flash Gordon. But they had a bunch that were all the same size, and they could all interact with each other. They were well articulated and are great. And there's been a few reproductions over the years by other companies or new versions of Mego, but Mego went out of business eventually. But so those were from like 72 going forward. Micronauts were from 76 to 1976 to 1980, based on the Micromen. And another big selling point of them was that they were interchangeable. You could take pieces and parts from different toys and put them on other toys. And the vehicles could all be arranged in it. So there was the figures, but there was also a bunch of vehicles, and a lot of them were battery powered. Had wheels and tractor treads on them and stuff. And you could arrange those in different ways and take pieces of one vehicle and put it on another one. So it really increased the playability. Of course, it also increased the likelihood you're going to lose a part. But they were amazing, the best toys. We had a whole bunch of them. We also had the, I don't know if you... I sent you a bunch of videos. There was one with
I watched them all.
Sort of a transport. There was like a transport system, tube.
The tubes that glow in the dark.
Yeah, we had a smaller version. The one in the video was a little bigger than the one we had. We basically had an oval and then the up and down part. got that for Christmas one year.
When
I
you
think.
no, when you say we, you mean like your family, your household, or
Yeah. My brother. Yeah, like Santa Claus would bring it for for all the kids.
okay. Just checking, because like at first I was like this is a rhetorical we where you're saying like we as in the children of the 70s, and I was like, no, this
No,
is a
I
more
meant my
specific
house.
we.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the oldest of 9 children. Of course, we got individual presents, but sometimes there would just be some big thing that was kind of for everybody. Like one year we got a Death Star playset for our Star Wars figures, and one year we got the Micronauts tube thing. So yeah, they were
The
great.
rocket tubes. What you can pretend this is the transportation of the future. That was a line from the commercial that I
Yes.
thought was very weird. You can pretend. I'm like, okay, yeah, I guess I could, but I could do that without the toy. That's such a weird way to phrase it. Sorry, that was my tangent.
I mean, that's how toys work. He's basically giving you permission to use toys in the manner in which they are used.
Yeah, but usually I feel like toys aren't advertised with the idea of like this you can pretend. Usually I feel like, but maybe this is just like reflective of what toy advertisement styles were like when I was a child versus in that time. Because usually the way that I'm used to toys being sold is getting rid of the pretense of pretending and suggesting that this is actually real, because that's what kids want. Kids want you to take their pretending seriously as if it is reality.
So before we get into the comic book, what did you think of these toys?
I thought that it was the interchangeability, I'm sure, was probably like the biggest appeal of them, and that was the thing that I noted about them across the different commercials. And I want to know what math they were doing when they would explain like how many different toys you could make out of it. Like I think one the battle cruiser commercial that you sent said it's like 5 toys at once, and I was like, okay, I understand that because the big battle cruiser breaks down into 5 different vehicles. And then it said 72 parts that let you build over 25 different toys. I was like, how did you get the number over 25? like how did you make that number? And I was like, what constitutes a toy in this instance? Can one part be used as a toy? I feel like realistically no, but again, I didn't play with these things, and this is probably not that relevant, but it was just a thought I was having of like, I want to know what this math is.
Well, I would say that, so first you've got the entire, I have one of these still. Well, I say still, I don't know if I had it at the time, but years later I bought one on eBay that was complete. Mm-hmm. The box was torn up, but the pieces were all complete, and I still have that one. But you have the complete ship, and then it breaks apart into 5 ships. And then every combination of putting 2 of those pieces together or more counts as another toy. So if you just stick 2 or 3 of those pieces together in a different configuration, that counts as another toy. That's how the
problem thing.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So somebody sat down and said, okay, how many pieces do we have? How many ways can they be combined? 20 equals 25 toys. So there you go. But if you've got just one other Micronauts toy, you can start combining those pieces as well. And you're off to the races. So there you go. Is this something you think you would have played with? Were they available when you were a child?
I don't think so, but partially because clearly I'm not the target audience. Like, it's distinctly a boy toy. It's all boys that are shown in the advertising. The colors are coded more towards boys. And I wasn't a child that played with a lot of boys' toys. I don't think it was because, like, I wasn't allowed to. It just wasn't what happened.
Right.
But I enjoyed similar toys. Like, I liked Tinker toys a lot, so I wonder if, like, maybe something like that would have been nice. My sister was really into Legos, and I was less into Legos, but, you know, I that was kind of the immediate comparison I wanted to make with this was, like, Legos. The idea of being able to take something apart and put it back together in a different configuration. And I also, what was something else that it reminded me of? I just had it, and now it's gone. I'm gonna remember it. I used to do, like, those, like, electronics kits, where you, like, it's meant to teach kids about how, like, circuits work, and that was the other thing that I wanted to compare it to, was that, Legos, and Tinker Toys. Those were all my comparisons that I had. I don't think it would have necessarily been something I played with, but that's because most of the time I was a dolls kid, yeah. The targeted girl marketing worked on me. I played with dolls. And I didn't like baby dolls. I liked the Barbies and stuff like that. I was an ambitious doll person.
I mean, these are a form of dolls, but yeah,
But they don't have hair. They don't have clothes.
Well, yeah. I do dislike the way they tend to market certain kinds of toys towards boys and others towards girls. I wish they were marketed a little more neutrally.
Right.
My sister Lita loved and still loves Transformers, but kids used to make fun of her for playing with boys' toys. Like
Yeah. I think another thing is that, and as I got older, this definitely became worse. I don't think it was like as prominent when I was a child, but I was a kid that when I played with dolls, I spent 3 hours setting up the dollhouse, and then it was time to go eat, so then I didn't actually get to do any like story things. And so I wonder if the idea of interchangeable parts, I think that's part of the reason why I didn't care for Legos so much, is because like there was so, it's like, you can do anything. I'm like, that's scary. I don't want to do anything. So I'm gonna do nothing instead. And I wonder if that I would have had a similar issue with these toys, because I think like definitely today, you know, because I'm like, every once in a while I wonder like, do I still have the capacity to play with toys? And I'm like, yeah, maybe. But I think if I was presented this toy as an adult, I would have that problem of like, there are too many choices, so I want to choose nothing.
Well, I mean, you could just put it together in the standard way that's on the box and go with that.
That was my favorite way to play with Legos. Loved me an instruction booklet. I was a boring child.
I still buy Legos, though I tend to just buy the little minifigs and in the blind packs, which is very frustrating.
Boo, blind backs.
They put out a new series at least once a year, possibly more than once a year, of little blind packs. And now they start putting them in boxes, so you can't even sort of feel the pouch to figure out if it's the one. Yeah. You'd be like, okay, clearly this is the jalapeno head guy, and I don't want that one. Like, okay, I think I'm feeling a sword. That's the guy I'm looking for. No, now they're in a little box, so they're on to us. So there you go. Now, in 1977, Marvel Comics writer Bill Mantelow's son Adam opened a Christmas present from his grandparents, which was Micronauts, and Bill immediately was struck with inspiration and convinced the editor-in-chief, Jim Shooter, to get the comic book license to the Micronauts, and that is how it became a comic book. I think this might have been the first one, but it wasn't the last. They ended up making comic books out of a toy called Rom, who's maybe even more obscure than Micronauts.
It definitely seemed so.
Transformers, G.I. Joe, Shogun Warriors. These were all toy-based comic books that Marvel made, and some of those have been picked up by other companies after Marvel lost the license. Years later, other companies have put out comic books based on some of these characters. But I won't swear to it, but I think Micronauts was the first. Although Rom, I believe, came out the same year. Rom Space Knight, he was a weird toy because he was just by himself. If he was meant to be the beginning of a line, the rest of the line never came out.
I read some of his Wikipedia article too. And
okay.
As this was a new venture for the company, Parker Brothers, and given that electronic toys were still very new, a decision was made to produce the figure as cheaply as possible. As a result, the final product had very few points of articulation, and twin red LEDs served as Rom's eyes instead of the originally envisioned green, which were more expensive to produce. Rom appeared in the corner box of the cover of Time magazine's December 10th, 1979 issue. It was featured in the interior article, Those Beeping, Thinking Toys, which decried Rom's lack of articulation and predicted it would end up among the dust balls under the playroom sofa, and it seems like it did fail. I think I read it, they only sold 200,000 to 300,000 toys at all ever in the U.S.
Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure the comic book lasted longer than the shelf life of the toy.
That seems accurate.
So, both Micronauts and Rom so they were licensed by Marvel, and eventually the license ran out. But recently Marvel has, I guess, reacquired the license because both of these books are being reprinted in omnibus editions. I think they will both end up being 3 volumes each. The first volume of each of them is currently out. I have them. I'm slowly making my way through them. But as far as Micronauts goes, this is the comic book that turned me from a mere comic book reader into a comic book collector, because it was an ongoing story. Some books, particularly the DC ones at the time, the story would tend to be contained to one issue. But that was certainly not the case with the Micronauts. And I had to have every issue. And I actually came in on issue 3 because I was already a huge fan of the toys. So when I saw this comic book, I grabbed it immediately. And it took me a few years. A classmate, her brother had issues 1 and 2. And I convinced her to convince him to sell them to me for $5 for the 2, which at the time was a fair price. They're worth a lot more now, or would be if they were still in good condition. But I used to reread for at least the first 12 issues every year for several years. I would go back and reread those first 12 issues, and sometimes the whole series up to the point where I was at. And of course, I'm rereading them now in this beautiful, glossy, hard-covered omnibus that has been put out. That was also the first time I really noticed the artist. Michael Golden was the artist, and his art just really stood out. And then, I don't know how much of these you looked at, but some comics, they will put out what they call an annual. It'll be like a double-sized issue once a year, but sometimes they're inconsistent. So after 12 months of Michael Golden comics, they put out an annual, and all the art in the annual was by Steve Ditko, he's an important artist, but he's not as good. He's not as good as Michael Golden. At the time, I didn't care for his art very much at all, and it seemed like he had gotten worse over time. He was the original artist for like Spider-Man and Doctor Strange, a couple other things like that. And he is very important and influential, but also just not that good, I don't think. So I was pissed off. And it was double-sized issue full of his bad art. Oh, I was so angry. And then they did it again for annual number 2. He didn't do any other issues. He just did the 2 annuals. So it was terrible. It was terrible. So, Brianna, you read some of these online. What did you think of the Micronauts comic book?
I read the first issue several weeks ago when we first talked about discussing this on the podcast. And I read the first issue, and here's the thing. You know, I'm not fun, and I come into everything very cynical, and I'm a boring person. And I'm not a big sci-fi fan. I'm not a bit, especially like high sci-fi, which is what this presented itself as within its first issue. So I'm like kind of reading the words, and I'm like looking at every single bolded and italicized keyword that's like not a concept I understand because it's specific to this world, and my eyes start glazing over because I'm a bad reader. I did read the first one, and I realized I realized today, because I reread issue number 1 so I could take more detailed notes, and I realized today that I should have also read issue 2, because I read the Wikipedia summary for what like the overarching plot of the comics are, and issue 2 is clearly where the plot starts to happen, because that's when they show up on Earth. And I was like, oh, okay. And I had lots of thoughts about it. None of them, and not a lot of very good ones. But that's because I'm not fun and I'm a cynical person. Although I was also wondering like how common it was to have that italicized and bolding technique with like, look, keywords, like that was used in Micronauts. Like I was that common for the time, or
yes, yeah, and sometimes the bold seems random.
There are places where I can tell it's like
why.
I can tell where it's like a printing error versus like an intentional bold or italicization. Most of the time, though, it's used either for emphasis, as if someone that is speaking would have put emphasis on that word, or it's used to highlight certain terms like Dallin Acro Year Air Patrol, those sort of things. Like, hey, pay attention to this term. You need to know this one.
It's Brianna.
And then some of them are just like
pronounced...
typos from the way the pens are written. I know.
Is pronounced Acroyer.
Acroyer? Well,
yes.
I hate to break it to you, that's not how it's spelled, so...
I know.
Well, I pronounced it Mari, too, for most of the comic. I pronounced her name as Mari, because I thought Mari was a more interesting sci-fi name than Mary. I know it's Mary, because her name's Marionette, but, you know, whatever.
I think in my head I also say Mari, because that's how it seemed like it's spelled.
Yes,
but
right?
I think
it's a more interesting sci-fi.
There was a time when I wasn't sure if it was Acroyer or Acroyer, but I believe the official.
Is that how they pronounce it in like the television series or like the advertising?
There was never damn you! No, there was never a television series. There should have been, but there never was. No, just somewhere in the letters column or something, they made it clear how it was meant to be pronounced.
If they had just not put the A. The second A, if it was Y-E-R, most people would probably get it then. But no, it's not what they did, is it?
So the premise is that these guys were from the Microverse. And if you've seen the current Marvel movies, this concept is still there in Marvel Comics. They've just changed the name.
Oh, it's the quantum realm.
It's the quantum realm. The quantum realm, yes. The Microverse is inside of our universe on a subatomic level. And now they call it the quantum realm because they don't have the rights to call it the Microverse. And at the end of issue 1, the heroes are being pursued by the evil Baron Karza's forces, and they break through the space wall into our world, and they are the size of the toys in our world, keeping with the original premise of the Micromen. So so they do get bigger because they're not microscopic anymore, but they don't get human-sized.
Right.
And they run around our world in their toy-sized vehicles and stuff. And eventually
I think that sounds way more interesting than what actually happened in issue 1, so I should have read issue 2 because I think I would have been.
You should. And you still can.
I was specifically told to read issue 1 and I took the laziest route. So
well, you start with issue 1, but you don't have to stop with it.
Yeah, but was I enjoying issue 1?
Well, what did you think of the art?
Mary looks like she's gonna snap in half sometimes. Anyways, I think the art, like, I pulled up the annuals. I didn't read them, but I pulled them up. And the way that they're uploaded to this website that probably is housing them very legally, it looks like the quality is already worse based on the way that they're uploaded compared to issue 1. But I do see what you mean about the difference in the art. I think that issue 1 has much more vibrant colors, but I think that's part of that is going to be the way that things are uploaded. And more dynamic movement. Not necessarily just with the way that characters are posed, but in the way that motion is indicated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's Steve Ditko for you. So I just asked because that is part of what, I mean, I as I said, I was already a fan of the Micronauts, but part of the whole thing was just the art. It just seemed a step above a lot of what was going on in the comics at the time. But if you don't read a whole lot of comic books, it might not.
I don't have a point of reference in terms of comparison.
Right.
But I do have a friend that has talked about has done some animation and some comic work, and he's talked about how you have to represent action as a 2D drawing. Mm-hmm. And I can definitely tell that the skill level for issue 1 is much higher than the skill level that's demonstrated for the annuals in terms of portraying action, motion with a 2D picture.
Now, I believe that Michael Golden, let me see. Let me double check this. Oh, no, he's still around, but he doesn't seem to be doing anything. Maybe it was Bill Mantlo? Let me check that. No, they're both still around.
Mari's waist is so tiny sometimes. So tiny. I'm telling you, that's why I think she looks like she's going to snap in half.
Yeah. Now, the interesting thing, though, she was not one of the toys. In fact, I don't know that there were any female Micronauts.
Well, yeah. Who wants to play with a girl? Ew.
So Bill saw that was missing and corrected that. Now, some of these characters, because Bug was technically based on one of the figures, but he wasn't called really the name of his figure. He was just called Bug. So after they lost the license, they did continue to occasionally use some of these characters, some of the original characters. They couldn't use Microtron or Biotron and a Croyer, but they could use Bug and Mary, and I think they used the Commander, Arcturus Rand. And they would occasionally, when some other character ended up in what they could no longer call the Microverse, these characters called the Microns would interact with them. Years later, a couple other companies picked up the license. Devil's Due Comics had a brief run, and of course they had to change the story. They couldn't use any of the elements from the Marvel comics, so they had the character designs and their names, but they had to come up with a new story. And then IDW, it says Image Comics. Yes, there was in 2002 there was a series by Image Comics. 2004 there was one by Devil's Due Publishing, and then in 2015 IDW did some, and they also had the license for ROM, so there was some Micronauts ROM crossovers, and I think they even crossed over with Transformers and G.I. Joe, because IDW had the license for all of those. And then in 2023, Marvel renewed their license and has put out these omnibus editions that I mentioned. I don't know that means they're going to put out any really but they're going to reprint these old ones. Maybe if these sell really big, they'll consider.
It's a good way to make money.
Yeah. I mean, they're like $120. It's more like $90 on Amazon, but they're $125, I think, is the cover price. So,
right.
If
I'm
you
just
guys
saying,
are at
it
all
seems
curious,
like an easy way to.
Go ahead.
I'm mostly thinking of compared to Nintendo or something like that, where Nintendo has all these games that people are really nostalgic for, but that they can't play anymore because they're out of print, and it's like. You know what people would be really excited to do? Play your game if it was a reprint. They would give you money for it, but you won't reprint it.
Yeah.
Marvel is being smarter about it.
Well, and I'm sure they would have reprinted before now if they'd had the license, because they reprint
the license,
all of their stuff these days. And you can also get a digital copy if you want to go get it a little bit cheaper. But there you go.
I do have a couple of questions about issue 1.
Sure.
Because of my lack of reading comprehension, I guess. How much time has passed between chapter 1 and chapter 2? Do you know? Any idea?
1,000
years? They say something like 24 zats, whatever that means. But it says that the commander has been gone for 1,000 years. But
yes,
that's before the commander left before the events of chapter 1, because his parents are already deified. So
yes.
A bunch of time has passed since the commander left, but how much time passes between the coup and the commander's return? That's my question.
Let me see. Oh,
which is tied to my follow-up
I think it's
question.
Probably. Let me just check real quick. That's chapter 3, chapter 2, Homecoming. Where am I seeing 24 zats?
It's the conversation. Chapter 3, Escape. That's where the zats are.
Oh, okay.
In the Imperial Gallery. I'm not going to try to say any of these names anymore. I'm sad.
Okay. Yeah, because chapter 3 is the next day after chapter 2, but it is unclear.
But how much time passes between chapter 2 and chapter 1?
It's been almost 24 zats since your insurrection, Karza, and you're still enjoying the unswerving loyalty. So that seems to me like it's got to be either months or years, because Prince Shaitan here is being very impressed that he's still doing okay after that amount of time. So,
okay,
yeah,
this is my follow-up question regarding that. So I was a little confused about what exactly Mary was doing. When we first see her again in chapter 2, I was like, what is she trying to do? And I realized I was having a little trouble reading, because I was like, at first I thought maybe she got resurrected from the body pits or something like that. So I thought I was under the impression that this was not the same Princess Mary, or that she was part robot, or she was something had happened to her to make her different. But then I reread it and I was like, oh, so is she pretending to be a robot. And then I was like, what's the point of that? And then my next question was, how long has it been for it to be long enough for people to forget Mary and Microtron's appearances, but short enough for Mary to still look young and beautiful? Sort of thing.
Right.
You know.
Right.
And I mean, like, the concepts of, like, youth and beauty and women, you know, like, I understand, like, realistically, the lifespan of beauty in women is much larger than society is willing to give it, but, you know, just based on the fact that her waist looks like it could snap in half, I feel like that's not a stance the writers are going to take.
So it's probably not been 24 years.
Right.
It could be
unless,
months,
like, these people live
days.
Forever. That's also an option.
Right.
You know, like, maybe
I don't know.
People live
I don't have a good answer. It's an unnecessary use of space talk. They could have just said days or months. There was no need to put that in there. And yeah, there was no.
I also
usually
think
there'll be
that we should have actually seen them on Earth by the end of this issue, or that the issue where they're on Earth should have come first, and then this should have come out as a prequel. But that's different storytelling style than I recognize was maybe popular at the time.
Usually they'll put a little asterisk and in a footnote tell you what a Zat is, you know, when they do that kind of stuff. But I don't know why they didn't here.
Oh, that was another one of my questions, was like, what is this narrator? Like, the voice feels really weird, because sometimes it feels kind of omnipotent, and then sometimes it feels like it's trying to repeat the close third of the commander's thoughts, and I was like, what is going on with this narrative voice? You know what would have been a great use of that narrative voice is explaining what the, for lack of a better term, Earthling equivalent of a Zat is. That would have been great.
Yeah. Now, there has been a tendency in modern comics to do this differently. In comics at that time, in the 70s, it was always third-person omniscient. There is a tendency these days for the narrator to be the character's inner thoughts, as if he's telling the story to somebody. I always find it a little weird, though, because I'm like, who are you telling this story to? Are you writing this down? Are you... Although sometimes it's in the present tense, so it's just whatever they're thinking at that moment. It is literally their inner voice. But sometimes it's more like they are telling a story to somebody after the fact. But it's almost never an omniscient third-person narrator these days, or at least not the last time I read a comic book.
I guess for me is that it's mostly an omniscient third-person narrator. Like, it's mostly that. But every once in a while there's, like, places where it uses the way that language is used, so that makes me go like, oh, this is where we're dipping a little bit out of omniscience and into close. When aboard the HMS Endeavour, a hero's welcome, I'm glad you woke me for this. You waited a long time for this. A long time, ? Yes, 1,000 years is quite a stretch to be away from one's world. And I was like, okay, see, this feels like a break from the traditional omniscient objective sort of feel. But I recognize that the voice kind of dips in a little bit. I don't know.
So,
it feels like it could be more consistent to me. Yeah. There's also a whole thing about, like, anti-revolution, pro-divine right of kings that's lurking underneath the surface of this, but we probably shouldn't get into that.
There's a lot of that in your basic fantasy science fiction.
Yeah.
But, you know, some revolutions, a lot of revolutions, they don't replace it with something better. Just something different. It certainly happens.
But I think what it is, it's the framing of, like, the revolution being something that's objectively bad by the narrative. That's the thing that makes me kind of raise an eyebrow, because it's clear, like, they're like, oh, the people have expressed a preference, but they are fools. And I'm like, man, like, maybe this is why the people don't prefer you, because you think they're stupid for their opinions.
Yeah. So, folks, if you haven't read it, you can find it online unofficially, as well as buying the books. Commander Rand has gone on a 1,000-year exploratory mission where he is in suspended animation and through a mental link with his robot interacts with the things they encounter. Meanwhile, back home, they've invented a hyperdrive, so they pass him They go out and conquer the nearby universe, passing him. And Baron Karza stages a coup and overthrows the royal family and puts himself in charge and keeps the people in line by offering them immortality through his body banks. But it's pricey. It's not free. So people can earn... it's basically it's money, but it's body bank credit. And they can gamble for it, or they can just try to save it up. And he keeps the people in line with his promise of immortality, but it's not readily available to everybody. And then Commander Rand comes home from his 1,000-year mission to find this situation and immediately teams up with the counter-revolution to try and overthrow Baron Karza, who I think mostly coincidentally does look quite a bit like Darth Vader, but possibly even cooler, though. And he was one of a few. Some of the figures were bigger than the 4 inches, and they had magnetic parts. You could take off their arms and their legs and their heads and switch them around. They attached to the torso magnetically. And you could make a centaur. The 2 figures that were like that had horse figures, and you could turn them into a centaur.
Yeah, I was going to say, isn't he like part horse? That's what makes him cooler than Darth Vader.
Yeah. He can switch back and forth at will, apparently, but then he takes the prince and forces him into a centaur form, and he cannot change back and forth. But that's why.
I read that in the Wikipedia summary. I wish that we engaged more with the body bank, because I think that's one of the most intriguing concepts that they introduce in issue 1. But I recognize that's kind of like a thing that like is going to be talked about later. It's a thing that you name drop, so you can go like, the body banks, what are those? And then you keep reading so you can find out more about the villain's horrible plan or whatever. But I wish we got like a little bit more of a peek at like what the horror and or like, I guess for lack of, I don't know what the good thing about the body banks is, like why it's so desirable, the body banks, but also the way that they can be used horrifically, because that seems to set up, like they're setting it up for it to be like a horror sort of thing. But what do I know?
All right, I think that's enough about the Micronauts. BrieCheese, what do you got for me?
I have 2 choices. We could talk about Inside Out, the first movie, because the sequel just came out in theaters, and I went to see it, but we're not going to talk about the sequel because it's still in theaters. But Inside Out, the first movie, or we can try to dissect whatever people of my generation and younger are saying these days and what those words are supposed to mean, because I went on a trip to see family this past week, and one of my 8-year-old cousin unironically used the phrase, "Are you gonna take the L like in Fortnite?" And it was the first time I'd ever heard someone unironically say that, and I lost it. I was laughing. I was like, oh, okay. So that's the options are like Gen Alpha, Gen Z slang, or Inside Out. Specifically, the idea of like what it was like to watch Inside Out at the age you were when it came out, and how the perspective might differ based on your age.
Okay. I mean, I've seen Inside Out, so I don't know how much explaining there would be to do. So why don't you hit me up with the lingo, the jive, the slang the kids are saying today.
Do you have any like that you know of that you have wondered about? I'm not promising to know because the alphas confuse me, but you know.
Our buddy Kagan said to me backstage that I was slaying the boots. And I was like, well, I know what slay means, but how am I slaying the boots specifically?
That one haven't. I think it's just another way to say slay, but like with a specific use of phrasing. Again, don't promise to be a slang expert. Plus, a lot of these terms originate in communities that I'm not part of. So, like, I'm definitely not the most qualified person. I tried looking it, but
I mean, I get the gist of what it means, but the etymology escaped me. And I tried looking it up, and I did see some longer versions of like slaying the house down, booting the house down,
slay the house down, boots. Yeah.
Yeah, which I think has to do with kicking the house down with one's boots, coming in and just tearing the place up. Do it in a good way. You've done well. You knocked everything down in a good way. So there's that.
Okay, I found one long paragraph on Urban Dictionary, which, like, I know Urban Dictionary is mocked for, not being a very good source, which often it isn't, but also it's probably one of the best sources when you're talking about really new words and terms. So, the term is a portmanteau and takes the form of a command followed by a proclamation. Slay the house down boots mixes the use of slay, widely used as shorthand to express joyful surprise, with the instruction to slay the house down, implying a larger edifice or audience, typically in the context of a performance. The addition of boots is used for shock effect, echoing wider gay parlance. So, thank you, Rabid Tuberculosis, for that description.
Okay, so to get back to your first one, taking the L just means to gracefully accept that you have lost. The L is
gracefully is not always
but just accept that you lost. Move on. Accept that you have lost and move on. And
are you gonna take
I've
the
also
loss?
seen like to take the W in a way that the person that doesn't seem satisfied with the fact that they've won and they're being told, dude, you won, just be okay. Take the fact that you won and move on. Instead of because I think it's a situation where somebody seems to want more. The fact that they won isn't enough, or they're going to keep going until they've turned their win into a loss. So they're just take the W and go.
W is just W or dub is just win, and pretty much any context in which you could use win, you can use dub. So that would be like, man, take the win while you have it, sort of thing. That would make sense.
That's the way I've always seen it. In that you're not realizing that you've won, and you need to just do that and go. Because if you keep it up, you're going to turn it into a loss. Okay, well, what else do you have?
Okay, according to dictionary.com, do you know what these Gen Z slang terms mean and where they really come from? Have you heard? Oh, okay. I'm not gonna read the list exactly, but I'm gonna pull some of the stuff that's on here. You heard cap?
Yes, but I don't understand. I mean, I understand what it means, but I don't understand why it means that.
I don't know either.
You're no help.
It says in black slang, to cap about something means to brag, exaggerate, or lie about it on this dictionary.com thing.
Yeah.
The meaning dates all the way back to at least the early 1900s.
Wow.
And so it's just probably like most slang, it probably originates in African American vernacular English, because that's usually how it goes, and then people start associating it with young stupid white kids, because that's when it gets popular.
When a century later they acquire it.
Yeah.
And often it's the reverse. People say no cap to mean no lie.
Yeah. Or I've also seen I watch people play video games on the internet, and sometimes when they play like Among Us, a social deduction game, they'd be like, that's cap, that's a lie, sort of thing, to call people out, I guess.
Yes, not to be confused with putting a cap in one's ass.
Okay, that one I haven't heard. Don't know that one.
To shoot someone.
Pop
a cap Pop a cap in someone's ass.
I see. Oh, here was one that a lot of the rest of Young Splain was using around during the play we were in. Ate.
Yes.
Like, she ate, sort of thing. That one I hadn't heard before until until the rest of Young Splain started using it a lot, but I understood what it meant pretty quickly. Basically just, she ate, you ate, basically like, you did a great job, that was incredible, sort of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know why it's ate, but also for some reason to me, it makes sense. I don't know why it does, though. It's just like on a subconscious level, I'm like, okay, yeah, that makes sense for some reason. I don't think I could articulate it intelligently.
Okay.
Yep.
I've also seen ate and left no crumbs to have thoroughly.
Yeah, I saw that one too. I thought that was that was great. That was a delight. Have you heard skibbity/skibbity toilet? Because that's one that's confused me for a long time.
Yeah, I know. So I heard it, but I don't
finally
really know.
Succumbed, and I gave in, and I decided I was going to figure out what it meant. And really what it is it's really just a reference to a specific series of videos. And when kids say it, they're using the type of humor where like, hey, you know this thing that we've both watched? I'm gonna just like drop the word from that thing that we both watched, and we're gonna both think it's funny because we both watched it, you know? That sort of thing. It's like people that walk around saying bazinga or whatever. It's funny because it's in Big Bang Theory, and we both know it's from Big Bang Theory. Haha, bazinga. It's like that, but the word in this case is skibby. That's it. Okay. Apparently, it has no more specific meaning.
Yeah, I have not watched Skibbity Toilet, but I have heard of it.
I watched some of it, but I was really confused. Oh, also part of it is that, like, the first few videos, I read the Wikipedia article because, you know, that's the amount of research I'm going to put into these sort of things. They used a copyrighted song for, like, the first couple of videos, and so I watched the first, like, I think I saw that they were, like, the first 12 episodes, but all the episodes are, like, really, really, really short, so it's, like, a minute-long video total. I don't know for sure if that's true, but, it was mostly silent because at the very beginning you hear the song, but then it's cut out from the rest of the video because it got copyright struck.
Right.
And so I'm just like watching these like toilets or not heads sticking out of toilets lip sync to a song that no one can hear because of the copyright issue. But I used to watch videos like that when I was in middle school and stuff like that. It's kind of like leaning into an idea of like, ooh, random humor sort of thing. Look, it's a head sticking out of a toilet singing a song and making exaggerated movements. Isn't this funny? And it's like, yeah, I used to think that was stuff like that was funny. I you know, it's a kid thing. And I'm sure there's probably like some of them, like if I saw them for the first time today, they would still get me. But Skibbity was the big mystery for me, so I learned what it was.
I saw this guy on Instagram who was making up 80s era slang. He was a teacher, and so he was telling his students made up slang terms from the 80s and convincing them that these were things people used to really say.
Such as?
I can't remember what any of them were now.
That's unfortunate. It's tragic. But
they were usually things like, you know, some synonym for cool.
Right.
Or something like that, you know.
Let's see. Okay, here's a list from parents.com/teen slang words in 2024, a dictionary for parents. General terms. There's AF. They all have like really brief definitions next to them. AF, which is, we can swear on this show, right? We did okay.
Yes,
we can swear.
You may.
I talked about fetishes in the last one, so stands for as fuck, used to emphasize a statement. Yes. So that one's like not traditionally, because I can't pronounce this word. CHEUGY apparently
Chugi.
Is something that is out of date. Okay, Chugi, something that is out of date or a person who's trying too hard. And then there's cringe, which like I feel like cringe is used in a way that is not difficult to decipher, but maybe I'm just biased because I understand what cringe means, but it's like cringe is used to describe stuff that makes you cringe. So, you know, like...
Yes.
Dead. Something is so funny that the speaker has died of laughter. Extra. I feel like extra isn't used that much anymore, but
old.
I'm out of touch with
I think that's
kids.
come and gone.
Yeah, extras, over the top, or extreme. A lot of some of the slang that I see are where they just, like, shorten words down to one syllable. So, like, fit, short for outfit, or, rizz.
Okay. I hadn't heard that one.
So...
Rizz for charisma.
Rizz. Yeah, rizz is for charisma, and also, one thing that I've seen, though, is that I've seen rizz used as a verb. Instead of just a noun.
Okay.
Like, oh, I'm gonna rizz her up, you know, like, I'm gonna hit her up, I'm gonna, like, put the moves on her, sort of thing.
Charm it.
Yeah. Let's see.
Sus. I hear sus for suspicious or suspect.
Yep. Suspicious, yeah.
Which seemed to be mostly in come from the context of that game. What was that game?
Among Us.
It was one. Among Us. Yes.
Yeah, that's also where I heard like cap used a lot. Is in Among
Okay.
Us, the idea of like, oh, that's Cap.
Okay.
He wasn't in the cafeteria. I was there and he was not there, sort of thing.
Right. Some friends were playing Among Us, and I joined them. It was my first game, and it was in the mod where there were two traders, and nobody had explained anything to me. So I was like, I can't remember who the other player was. I'm gonna call her Mary though. I'm like, how come my name and Mary's are in red and everybody else's is in green or blue or whatever it was? And everybody's like, oh yeah, but we still won, even though I gave it away. I don't know. I can't remember if she shot somebody or achieved her final.
Play nice, I think we had, or something.
No, because it was just moments after that while everybody was still going, oh, what did you do? That I guess we had a goal to achieve, and we had somehow achieved it before anybody could do anything about the fact that I messed up. Yeah. Right. So our names were red because we were the traitors, but nobody had explained that to me.
Yeah, so, I've encountered a lot of scenarios where, like, bringing people in for the first time to Among Us, I'm like, you have to explain shit to people. And I'm like, sometimes I'm like, inevitably, there's going to be something that I can't explain to you on the first try, and you might out yourself as an imposter by doing that. But I am going to do my best to explain. And I don't play Among Us anymore because I discovered the far superior alternative, Goose Goose Duck. Shout out to Goose Goose Duck. It's free, has in-game proximity voice.
Okay.
And lots of different roles and modes. I really enjoy the game, and I think more people should appreciate it.
And this is different from Duck Duck Goose?
Correct. I think they just titled it Goose Goose Duck, spinning on Duck Duck Goose sort of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how
I think the ducks are evil and the geese are good.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all it is.
You got a couple more before we go?
Let's see. I'm gonna start reading from this list. And you can stop me when something sounds confusing. Cringe, dead, dope, extra, fit, fire, goat, go off, Gucci, hits different, IRL, IYKYK, lit, low key, mood, OMG, ONG, preppy, rizz, salty.
Wait, go back. What is ONG?
Apparently it's basically the equivalent of I swear to God. I'm wondering if it's meant to be kind of like on God versus oh my God. It's on God, and that's where the N is. But I'm not sure that's like what the etymology is. This is a very bare bones definition list.
Okay. Just telling
salty,
you what, not why.
Sick, Sigma, slay, sleep on, snatch.
Sigma's part of the whole. Wait, Sigma is part of the whole alpha bullshit, right? Because there's no such thing as an alpha.
Yeah, that's definitely where it originated from.
Yeah.
The idea of a Sigma,
they're like loners,
I've only
right?
I've only ever seen Sigma used ironically as a derogative term. Like, it's one thing to call yourself an alpha, that's cringe, but I think it's extra cringe to call yourself a Sigma. Because, to me, if you're gonna call yourself a Sigma, it means that you're insecure about calling yourself an alpha, so you're trying to carve out this identity for yourself that it's like, well, I'm not like the other wolves, I'm not like the other alphas, I'm a Sigma, you know, I'm unique and a lone wolf sort of thing, and I'm like, that's just, I'm not like other girls, but for men, and I've been through that, and it's cringe, so... I did the I'm not like other girls, and it was cringe, don't do that.
Folks, if you haven't heard, there's no such thing as an alpha. It's not true. It's not how humans work. It's bullshit. It's not how wolves work.
It's not how wolves work.
And you might think you're the alpha in a certain situation, but that doesn't mean you're an alpha in every situation. And it's not, I don't think, a healthy way to approach human relationships. As in addition to being inaccurate, it not only isn't true, but should not be true. Don't approach life with an alpha, beta, gamma, sigma attitude, which can also be broken down into Mo's, Larry's, and Curly's.
I don't think I've heard gamma.
There you go. There's a topic.
I'm used to omega, beta, alpha, and sigma. I've heard gamma exists, but I have no idea what it is, and I don't really want to know.
I think they're just they're Curly's.
That I know that this is a Stooges reference, but I know very little about the Stooges.
Moe is definitely an alpha, and Larry is a beta, and Curly is sort of a sub-beta. And Curly can aspire to be Larry. Larry can be Moe in the right circumstances, but Curly can never be Moe. Curly can maybe be Larry, but he can't be Moe. You can only go up one. You can only go up one notch. I appreciate that you know who the Stooges are, though. That's good to hear. Good to hear.
Let's see.
Some of the young splains didn't know who the Marx Brothers were, though.
That includes me. Sorry.
Yeah, so there you go. That's not next week, but that will be a future topic.
There's also Slay, Sleep On, Snatched, TBH, Tea, Thirsty, Vanilla, Yassify, Yeet, YOLO,
Yassify?
Bay.
I had Yeet explained to me years ago, but yeah, give me that one.
A dramatic makeover, or to apply several beauty filters to a person until Yassify.
So it's like is that
it's
like
to
Yaz?
Turn someone,
we're gonna Yazify you?
it's to turn someone into someone. It's to turn someone into a person that would make you go Yaz. I think is the way that I've always interpreted it. And apparently there's an ironic application of it where you apply several beauty filters to a picture until the person is totally unrecognizable, which sounds like a funny meme. Not gonna lie.
Okay. If you're not aware, Yaz is just a variation of yes, often accompanied by the word queen, which as an American I object to. Fuck the royalty.
Yeah, that's why we're
devaluing
the word by assigning it to everybody.
Ladies and gentlemen, do not aspire to be a queen.
We're stripping the English monarchy of the power of queen by giving it to everyone.
I guess.
The
by
word
making
is
everybody a
now.
queen. When everybody's a queen, no one's a queen.
Exactly.
Because a point in every direction is the same as a point in no direction. Okay, I think that's...
Let me see if I can find one particularly funny list.
Okay.
Have you heard simp?
Yes.
Yeah, simp.
But tell us... but what is the... Yeah, I can't find the words. Explain simp.
Okay, so simp has a noun form and a verb form, and I'm sure that you can extrapolate it into adjectives or whatever. But as a noun, it's someone who does way too much for the person they like. So there's there's two ways to use simp. There's simp to use it like, oh, I simp for her, and it's meant to just be like, oh, I have a huge crush on them. Or there's the derogatory way to use simp, where it's like, oh, look at this fucking simp, giving this OnlyFans girl millions of dollars and she won't even give him any attention, sort of thing. So the derogatory way being like someone that is obsessed with a person and fails to recognize the fact that the relationship is relatively one-sided. And I think that's pretty much covers it.
Mm-hmm. I guess it seems to have evolved out of simple or simpleton.
I don't know about that one.
But it doesn't have to. But unlike simpleton, unlike simple or simpleton, it's not just being dumb. It's being dumb in a particular way. An unrequited way.
Have you seen terms like S3X or unalive or you seen anything like that?
Oh, are these things because you're on some platform that is trying to edit out certain words?
Yes, you're trying to avoid triggering
trying to restrict
a platform's algorithm that might be upset by certain words like sex, suicide, kill, murder, things like that.
Yes.
So they come up with these very silly alternatives. Yeah, segs.
Segs. Segs. I've seen segs.
Mm-hmm. I find unalive to be like funny. I think unalive is a hilarious word. And I understand it's often used. It's like it takes away. Grape. Oh, grape. I've seen grapeseed oil. I've seen a few different things like that. Yeah.
Folks, if you have some slang terms you want to throw at us, maybe something we haven't heard of, something that's too new to have gotten onto Urban Dictionary or into a guide for parents, send us a voicemail or send us an email. Mail it into monstermoviefuntimego@gmail.com because we're just going to use that address. I have another podcast, Monster Movie Funtime Go, and it is been around for almost 3 years, so we're just going to use that email. If this gets bigger, we'll get our own free Gmail for this show. But I just haven't bothered
as
with
the
that.
oldest young splain, will do my best to tell you what the kids are saying nowadays.
Yes.
I don't know what that is.
If you have any ideas for young splain topics, I have an infinite amount of old splain topics, but we need some young splain. Because here's the thing. For an oldster, I'm pretty hip. There's not a lot I haven't already heard about, so we need some.
Yeah, I was going to talk about the Helldivers drama once, and you were like, "Oh yeah, I've heard of that," and I was like, "Damn it."
I've heard of Helldivers, but I don't know the details. Helldivers.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can hit me up with that. If somebody wants to explain what a Vanderpump is and what its rules are, I'd be happy to listen to that.
I don't know very much about that show, except when people that are on it show up in different shows like The Masked Singer and Dancing with the Stars.
Yeah. I love Dancing with the Stars, but they should in Truth in Advertising, the name of that show should be Dancing with People You May Have Heard of.
Dancing with moderately famous people.
Yeah, they are not stars. Many of them are not stars. A few of them are, but yeah, most of them are just people you may have heard of. Having been on The Bachelorette does not make you a star.
Because it's one of the few dance competition shows that are still on TV. I miss World of Dance.
Yeah.
World of Dance is where it was at.
I really like just seeing these people who usually don't have a whole lot of experience and them just learning this new thing and being very excited about it and often ending up being actually good at it. That I always find that interesting.
My family likes to sit there though. My dad and I, we just sit there and we nitpick everything. We get bored, I guess. And so sometimes we try to nitpick the performance but like my whole family does this. I guess it's what makes it fun for us. But then we start nitpicking things like the camera angles, the costumes, the sound design, because for some reason a few like of these competition shows, there was like a string of like really awful sound design or like really unflattering sound design. Like I'd be watching AGT and a choir would go on and would perform and everyone's like, "Wow, that was amazing." And I was like, "That was horrible to listen to." And I'm like, that must be like a sound mixing error on the television end. But yeah.
All right, I have our topic our old splain topic for next week.
Okay.
It's going to be an interesting one, and I particularly wanted your input on this. Are you at all familiar with, have you heard of Charlie Chan?
Charlie Chan. Is that Chris Chan?
Charlie Chan.
No. Charlie Chan.
No.
Chris Chan is something different.
Charlie Chan.
Chris Chan is a young splain thing, and I don't want to explain
it. I think that would be excellent, though, to go with Charlie Chan for next week.
Mm-hmm.
So think about it.
I will look into
that would be an excellent pairing.
In person.
Okay, so
I don't want to talk about Chris Chan. I am not qualified.
Well, somebody get one of the other young splains to come on here and tell me about Chris
doubt
Chan,
any of them are more qualified than I am. It's one of those things where it's like it's a thing that happened on the internet and it's really like it's like the bad place of the internet. I don't want to touch it.
Okay. I'll do a brief setup. I'll briefly explain it now, and then you will go experience it and come give me your feedback.
Okay.
And I will look into maybe I will explain Chris Chan. Charlie Chan is a fictional detective who began in books, but then went on to appear in a series of popular films played by 3 different guys, and then a few attempts to revive him in later years, like in the 70s. He is loosely based on a real character. He is
a real person.
Yes, he's loosely based on a real person. He is a real character. He is loosely based on a real person who was chief of police in Honolulu. There are problematic elements, being old-fashioned and Chinese, but created by a white guy.
Yeah, I saw that coming when I saw the name.
Yeah, there's some problematic elements, but it's not as simple as that. I think it's a complex topic, and I'm also just curious to see how it strikes you as a younger person who's never encountered him. He used to be on the afternoon movie in the old days, which is the premise of this whole show. You just watched whatever came on TV. You couldn't watch whatever you wanted whenever you wanted, and frequently Saturday afternoon, Sunday afternoon movies would be an old Charlie Chan movie, and that's how I first encountered Charlie Chan. And I certainly enjoyed him at the time. I was a kid though. The problematic elements were beyond me as a child. But what I specifically want you to look at is Charlie Chan in Paris, which you can find on YouTube. But any other material you want to consume or look into would be great. But I just want to make sure that there's something that we've both looked at recently that we can talk about. And that is the one where his son first appears in that movie. And his children are one of the things I want to discuss as well. Mm-hmm. So
I have a question Charlie that's Chan. Meant to give you a hard time.
What's that?
Why do you want my specific feedback? Specifically me?
Because you're part Chinese, so I want to know.
Exactly. Okay, that was what it was. I figured.
It's you.
I was gonna give you a hard time.
We discussed the phrase "it hits different." I want to know if it hits you different. You just might have a different perspective than some of the other young splains. So,
right, that's fair. And I'll start getting into my dissection.
There you go.
Of my relationship to Asian representation on screen.
Exactly. Because I can understand these things intellectually, but it may not strike me as directly and emotionally as it does you. So I want I don't want you to feel bad about it, but I want to know how it comes off to you, and if it comes off as bad as it. Because the thing is, it might not seem as bad to you as it does to somebody on the outside, or it might seem a lot worse. Sometimes you don't know. Right.
Okay, then I have a proposed young splain that, again, predates some of the other young splains a little bit. But it has a more modern adaptation, so that's my justification. What is his name? There's a graphic novel called American Born Chinese, and Disney recently adapted it into a short television series. And I've consumed both properties. I'm gonna figure out what the author's name is. The author's name is Jean Luen Yang. Okay. And it's American Born Chinese is a graphic novel. I want to discuss the graphic novel mainly because the graphic novel is different, and there are some things that had to be lost from the graphic novel in adaptation to a YA series produced by Disney. And the things that had to be lost, I think, are significant to the original property and my response to it. I think the adaptation by Disney is a great television show, and I think the way that they integrate some of those themes that they would have lost by cutting the parts that they did was interesting and kind of clever. But, yeah. So, the graphic novel, consume the television show if you want, but the main thing I want is the graphic novel. I know our local library has it, but I don't know where else it might be available.
I had been curious about the show because there's people on it I like. Mm-hmm. I will look into the graphic novel.
Is it Kiwi Kwan and Michelle Yeoh?
Yes.
Yeah, I know.
We can talk.
And Stephanie Hsu!
We'll talk about Michelle Yeoh next. We'll talk a lot about Michelle Yeoh next week.
All right.
I think that's gonna wrap it up for now, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us. Like and subscribe. We should be up on YouTube now, and
share.
You listen to your
friends.
Podcasts. Yeah, tell your friends. Send us in those suggestions or just your feedback in general. And thanks for listening. We won't see you, but you will hear us next time on Old Splain, Young Splain.
You've been listening to Old Splain, Young Splain with Precious D. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and review us on your podcasting platform of choice.
All around the skinny bush, the monkey takes a riddler. The monkey thought Ohio was fun.